Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Marseille, aka the Property Pastor, coming at you with another amazing video. Today, we got a special treat for you. We got my buddy, Mr. Chris Catron, who is from Redeem Investments. Chris specializes in multifamily investments down in the Texas area. Correct? Is where you're living at, Chris?
Yes, sir.
And
That's right.
and I'm just so glad to have you on the show. Me and Chris go way back, and through the power of social media, we've been able to reconnect here in the past several months, I guess now. And I'm just excited to have you, Chris. And welcome aboard. Welcome to the show, man. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and introduce yourself to the Property Pastor Show.
Appreciate it, Marseille. Yeah, it's a joy and a privilege for me to be on with you. My name, Christian Catron. We specialize, my company is Redeem Investments, as Marseille said. We specialize in acquiring multifamily properties. Throughout the state of Texas, and we're looking at other markets as well, and really expanding over the course of the last 6 to 8 months. We've expanded our team so that we now have acquisition managers that cover specific states and are constantly reviewing deals and evaluating those. And we're constantly putting out offers for those properties that make sense. Of course, we have to go through a lot of deals like you do on the single family side in order to evaluate and ensure that those are the deals that you would want to acquire. But that's exactly what we're doing. So basically what we do and really what I have a heart for is taking large communities in these apartment buildings and really enhancing them, redeeming their qualities, bringing them back to the level that community deserves, and really renovating those properties so that the lives of folks that live there can be transformed. And in the course of doing so, to also be able to generate significant above average returns for my investors. And so that's really the heart of what we do, man. So excited to share a little bit more about that.
Man, that is some really good stuff, Christian, man. And as you look at this whole thing, looking at what your company does, I really resonated with the whole piece of kind of redeeming a property, and I think that's pretty neat. Sometimes people look at, real estate and they're like, well, this is just your opportunity to get rich, or you're a slumlord, or whatever the case is. But there are a lot of investors, and most that I know and associate with are people of high character. So, I really appreciate that and what you guys are doing. Now, Chris, are you doing this full time? Are you doing it part time? What does that look like for you? And then also, how long have you been doing multifamily investing also?
Yeah, no, great question. So short answer is not doing it full time yet.
Okay.
That is sort of the ultimate plan, is to be able to get to a point where, for all of us, I think nobody wants to work forever, for my passive income stream to be able to exceed my living expenses and ultimately replace my earned income. And so not quite there yet, but on the way.
Gotcha.
As far as how long I've been doing, my wife and I actually started together in October of 2017 in the residential realm, doing some fix and flip, some wholesaling, some private money lending. And that's really how we got our start. It's been within the past about 15 to 18 months where we pivoted and began pursuing commercial real estate and namely apartment buildings. And so that's really what we've been doing. It was February of 2019 when we closed on our first property.
Gotcha.
And then over the next 7 to 8 months, acquired 2 more properties. So now we're up to 132 units, and God willing, we'll be at 1,000 over the next year.
That is amazing, man. You talk about scaling. We look at business, and for a lot of folks, it's really just about getting that first deal. And I applaud you, man, to see you go from 2017 first deal to now actually, being very active in the multifamily space and constantly scaling. So you did mention one thing I thought was pretty interesting and pretty cool. You said your wife actually started investing with you.
Yeah.
How's that come along? Basically, was it her idea to get started? Was it your idea, or was it kind of a joint thing? What did that look like for you guys?
Yeah, no. So I sort of had this bug for real estate and really just entrepreneurship. I don't know if I really got into the story of my background, but having been born in a foreign country, my dad was an American, my mother was a Filipino girl, and I came to the States probably right before I turned 7.
Wow.
But the first 6 years of my life was living in really in poverty and really experiencing that. And so I had this desire to sort of rise above my humble beginnings and help create a legacy for my family. And so I'm the one sort of who was the driving force for us.
Gotcha.
What I will say is that what we discovered along the way is that she had very strong talents and desires outside the residential real estate space, namely because I had a full-time job and she was actively serving as the project manager for us, engaging with the contractors and being on site.
Okay.
That was not something that was going to be sort of a long-term solution for us. And really, when I began considering what aspects of real estate would enable me to grow at a faster scale, to sort of allow my wife to pursue things that she was more passionate about, which is women's health. She's actually a labor and delivery nurse, and
Nice.
has been very successful in her own right, doing things within that realm. Really transitioning to commercial real estate for me was a function of identifying what had the scalability factor, but then what could I also do without necessarily being out on the ground myself
Gotcha.
at each and every project that we had. And what I found with commercial real estate is that if you're buying the right deals in the right locations with job growth, population growth, of sufficient size that warranted or that could take care of the expenses of managing effectively a business,
hmm
and ultimately be able to hire the folks that would work on the property for you, then that would enable me to have capacity to be able to scale and do more of that, and without having to ask my wife to go and can you check to see if the tile matches up in the bathroom, which we've had that situation before. So you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just amazed that she was willing to step up as be your project manager. I mean, she must really love you, man. That's amazing stuff.
She does, and I know that because I enjoy being married and have been married for 18 years, that in order to preserve that, we needed to pivot and change
That's right.
directions.
Yeah, and it's what do they say? Happy wife, happy life, man. And
I know that's right.
and I think that's a really good point. You talk about, and we're going to unpack this as we go, but you talk about athletes, right? They watch the game film and they make adjustments, and that's what I kind of hear from you right there. Is you're looking at your business model, you're looking at your team, and you're literally saying, okay, what's going to help me get to my goals? What's going to help me to scale? What's going to help me to be most effective? And then the other piece of it is what's going to give me the quality of life and the enjoyment of life that I really want, and also my wife. So I think that's really something to be applauded, just kind of taking that whole assessment and actually, customizing what you do. So was there anything other than the scalability with multifamily and commercial that really drew you to it? Or was there other things within the commercial realm that you were like, yeah, that's really why I want to make that jump from single family for, a year and a half or whatever to over to multifamily? What other things really led you into that realm?
Yeah, I think so. When you consider the different, well, first of all, I applaud anybody who's gotten into the real estate game to begin with, because it takes courage to sort of craft a vision and then begin pursuing the execution of that and the attainment of that. And so, what I realize is that for us, if we were to continue in the residential realm, what we found was a lot of the deals that we're doing are transactional.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to get paid, you would have to take a project from start to finish in order to extract value from that, and
Okay.
then do it again and again and again. And so
Right.
and I have very successful friends like you who are doing it and doing multiple projects at a time, where it then creates enough revenue for it to function like a business as it
Mm-hmm.
should be, so that you're no longer sort of the technician necessarily, but now you're sort of managing and are building the scale and can sort of pull away from being on site doing all those daily activities, but now
Right.
have a team of folks doing those things. So that's one piece, is that because it was so transactional in nature, I know for myself and for my wife that we couldn't, that was not going to be sustainable, because again, the level of exhaustion and really
Right.
the just sort of the desire to do other things beyond being a project manager on
Yeah.
site for my
Right.
wife was a
Right.
challenge. The other piece is that, you know, as I mentioned earlier, for me, passive income really is the goal, and passive income from multiple streams. And, you know, until and unless you build a sizable rental portfolio in the
Mm-hmm.
residential realm, which I think is a very good target for people to try and attain, you know, you're not able to create that level of passive income yet until you have sort of a sizable rental portfolio.
Right.
And so as I looked at that model, I said, well, why can't we get a bunch of rentals and just have them all in one building, like an
Mm-hmm.
apartment?
Right.
And really, that's when I discovered, okay, if we were to pursue that as our primary lines of business, we're expending the same level of energy, we've got the
Mm-hmm.
same number of hours in a day, and the potential outcome and the potential, you know, sort of profitability and impact to the community, I felt was sort of larger and more significant
Gotcha.
as we looked at larger and larger deals as opposed to individual transactions.
Gotcha.
So that's really what drove my interest in my pursuit to be able to do that.
Right. And just so you guys kind of hear, you know, what Chris is saying is that whole transactional piece, right? So if you're out, you know, doing flips, right, you may flip 3 houses a year, 4 houses a year, couple of pieces of that, right? While the renovation's going on, you're not necessarily making income, right? And the other piece of it is you're out there managing contractors, you know, meeting inspectors if you don't have a GC, if you're doing it yourself. You know, you're doing all of these things. And even the other piece of it is if you have a portfolio of single family homes, it is a marathon, right? It is absolutely a marathon, you know. And one of the things that I kind of hear coming out of all of this is really just being efficient. You know, I think one of the things I'm gathering from just hearing you talk about it is you kind of looked at, okay, I've got, you know, 24 hours in a day. I've got a certain amount of time on my W-2 job. I've got a certain amount of time and I've got goals I'm trying to meet. What is going to be the best kind of vehicle to get me there, you know? And I think that's really, really something to kind of pull away from it. Because sometimes people get into real estate and they're like, okay, this time next year, boom, I'm retired. I'm quitting my job. You know, I got my $300 rent check, you know, whatever it is. I just cleared $300 in cash flow. I'm out, right? It doesn't necessarily work like that. You know, it is definitely a marathon. But I think you've done something really cool in that you have learned how to scale and build systems and start putting systems into your business to make it run more effectively where you're not the one that's really hands-on. So let's dig into that a little bit, right? So making that jump, right? I mean, just from the standpoint of you look at all the skill sets, what are some of those key skill sets that you had to pick up to make that jump from, you know, a single family investor with your wife doing property management for you, I mean, a project management rather, to actually scaling these 100 unit, 50 unit complexes that you're pursuing now? What are the things that you had to do to get there?
I think one of the blessings that I had coming into real estate was a lot of the work that I did in my professional career, as far as corporate America is concerned, is managing large businesses
Mm-hmm.
across multiple states with remote employees,
Okay.
right? And so what that prepared me to do, and the skill set that you have there, is to be able to, first of all, manage a sizable business like these apartments really effectively are businesses that have employees. So we have an on-site manager, we have our maintenance person, we have the regional directors, we have the folks that manage those guys,
Mm-hmm.
we have various contractors. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces, and to also do it from afar. And so I'm not physically on site, nor
Right.
would I ever be, because that's what I'm hiring people to go and do. And so the ability to be able to delegate and to manage other people is very key when you're talking about properties that are of this size.
Mm-hmm.
And there are tasks that need to be completed and certain metrics that you need to be able to meet. And so for me, being able to manage, basically a business operations, know what financial metrics that we need to meet, and to be able to have people on my team who are then managing the people that we've hired to do the work. All of those things combined are various levels of various types of skill sets that have helped us to be successful thus far.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that's how we're doing it.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. So how'd you talk about a team, right? And so I think one of the key pieces of it You talk about being able to delegate, you know, and build systems, build metrics. What does your team look like, and who are the key players that you've gone out and they basically recruited and hired? You know, what does that team look like for you?
Yeah. The most, let's see, how can I say, the most important job for me as an individual is finding deals and finding money,
Okay.
right? I have been very impressed, almost overwhelmed, and really flattered by the number of people who have learned what we're doing and have asked me if they can partner with us and invest in the form of the limited partnership.
Hmm.
And so there's a long line of people who are asking, when is your next deal available? And so from a money and a capital availability standpoint, that has presented itself in a way that I couldn't have even imagined. What that then means is that we need to make sure our deal flow game is
Yeah,
right. Uh,
exactly.
and so I actually have three acquisition managers, as I mentioned, that have different territory, or they have each have their own territory, and they're actively pursuing deals within that assigned territory. Sometimes those deals are created by way of relationships with wholesalers that
Hmm. Okay.
specifically focus on multifamily. Sometimes it's based on relationships that we've developed with brokers. Uh,
Hmm.
Sometimes it's with contractors that we've used, who have an awareness of what we're doing. Excuse me, who have an awareness of what we're doing, and when they recognize that there's a property that is in need of some TLC,
Hmm.
with either boarded up windows or landscaping that requires a significant amount of work, code violations, et cetera, we're fed those deals. And so um, having a number of people on my team who are actively looking for deals on my behalf has been proven to be essential. The,
Gotcha.
the other component is, well, what happens when you get those deals in your portfolio?
Hmm.
H- You know, how do
What
you,
now?
yeah, how do you ensure that those properties function the way they should, especially because the types of properties we're acquiring are considered, value add apartment buildings.
Right.
So Class B, Class C, typically workforce housing that we're trying to convert to a solid Class B, maybe even an A minus, with
Hmm.
the types of finishes that we're putting into these properties in order to meet the demand that some of even the existing tenants have for just a better quality product. And so what that means is that I have to have somebody on my team who has the title of an asset manager. So my asset manager engages on a day-to-day basis with the property management companies that we have hired in order to manage our properties. So
Okay.
on a weekly basis, we'll have an operations call to determine how are we looking as far as vacancies, were there any new leases, what does rent collections look like, what type of additional income opportunities are we in the process of implementing? Are there any
Hmm.
expenses? Just really going through a really significant list of key performance indicators to
Hmm.
determine what the performance of that property looks like.
Gotcha.
And so that's the function of my asset manager. And then of course I have an assistant who helps me event planning and the coordination and meetings and all those other things. The interesting thing that, right now, between the three acquisition managers, my one asset manager, my assistant, and myself, I mean, you're talking about a team of 6 people who can really function pretty effectively
Hmm.
because there are other members of our team who aren't internal.
Okay.
So those members include SEC attorney, real
Mm.
estate attorney, CPA,
Right.
property managers. There's a range of my banker. I mean, there's a range of different people who are part of our team per se, but not
Okay.
maybe internal to our
Right.
organization via these partnerships that we've established. And so I see them more than as just as vendors or as people who we have a transactional relationship. These I consider are members of our team.
Right. And I think that's key. I mean, no matter, if you're looking at a huge multifamily organization or even, a small portfolio, you're still going to have people on your team. You're going to have your CPA you deal with. You're going to have your realtor. You're going to have your wholesalers, your contractors. All of these folks are members of your team.
That's right.
So as you look at what you guys are doing, you've got a core nucleus team that's, very close and integral to what you do day to day. But then you have, like you said, transactional people who are helping you to get things done, which I think is very key, and also very important. One thing, what about, so as I'm looking at this, right, you're actually finding apartment complexes that you're adding value to, right? So there's construction going on. There is definitely rehab going on.
Oh, yeah.
How did you cut your teeth in that? Did you have experience when you started, or was this pretty much something you had to just learn along the way?
No, there were a lot of things from our time doing residential fix and flips that we were able to readily transfer
Mm-hmm.
to the commercial realm. When we started doing fix and flips with rehabbing, had no idea what to do, and so it's interesting because how do they say pay me now or pay me later?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who aspires to get into the real estate game is going to pay their tuition one way or the other,
One way or another. Yep.
either through mistakes that you're going to make
Yep.
along the way, which could be very expensive, or
Mm-hmm.
investing in yourself by way of some real estate education network, or becoming sort of an apprentice to somebody who is willing to mentor you,
Mm-hmm.
even if there's a cost associated with that. And so
Sure.
for me and my wife, when we started out, we did join a real estate education network that provided us with mentorship and coaching calls, and access to resources and documents and deal analyzers, and
Mm-hmm.
really everything that we needed in order to be successful.
Right.
Of course, there were, like anything else, there are people who buy into the same system, who utilize the tools available to varying degrees, and of
Mm-hmm.
course there are varying levels of success.
Absolutely.
Some of which you wouldn't even count as success. And so,
Yep.
fortunately, we were able to utilize the tools that we had available. And so as different opportunities for apartment buildings came about, it was simply a matter of recognizing, okay, well, you know what, in the residential realm, we needed to identify contractors, we needed to develop a scope of work, we needed to develop a payment schedule, and something very important, there's something called lien waivers that I better know a little bit about. And all of those things are applicable
Yep.
in the commercial realm as well. Now, I will
Mm-hmm.
say I'm super, super fortunate, and actually highlighted my property manager during our monthly webinar this past Saturday, where we talked about how we were able to engage in a partnership for a property that we acquired in Dallas, actually in Arlington, for example, which is a 44-unit apartment complex. And while they do property management, they're managing property now, they also specialize in repositioning or renovating properties, and handling basically soup to nuts, full
Oh,
service,
wow.
the
Yeah.
whole
So
renovation project. And
that
so
is,
finding somebody like that was essential to our success. And I
that
will,
is definitely rare as a
it,
gold mine. Yeah.
it really is, Marseille. And I'll tell you that, we bought that property for 3.8 million. We've
Mm-hmm.
now completed all of the renovations. I'm pretty confident that when we go and approach the bank in 90 days, which is the typical seasoning period for that,
Okay.
that they will value the property close to $7 million. And that will allow us to execute our business plan of
Mm-hmm.
doing a cash out refinance, returning that capital to the investors, hopefully having them invest in another deal that we have.
Right.
Meanwhile, they continue to get cash flow from this deal. So very excited about that.
Very good stuff. Let's unpack that for a minute. There was a
Yeah.
lot in there. Let's unpack that for just a second. So as I'm looking at this, right? So I hear acquisition cost, right?
Mhm.
Which for many folks in real estate is the biggest barrier. That is the cost of entry into real estate, which can be very tricky. So we're talking about, a lot of folks are just trying to scrape up enough money to buy a $200,000 house, but here we're talking about what's a $3.8 million property, something to that effect. So I heard you talk earlier about raising money with investors. things like syndication and whatnot. Talk us a little bit through what that process looks like from a standpoint of, okay, I've got a deal, because some folks will say, hey, get the cash and then worry about the deal. And then some folks will say, get the deal and then worry about the cash. Right.
Right.
So you've got the problem where you've got people knocking on your door like, Chris, when is the next deal? Please take my money. Right. Everybody wants to know how that happens.
Yeah.
So what does that kind of look like from the standpoint of structuring your deals, from raising funds to then the exit strategy to paying out your investors? Are they staying in the deal with you? Are you basically cashing them out at some point and then you hold on to pretty much all the ownership? What does that kind of look like?
Yeah. So part of my goal, well, let's see. You asked a lot of good questions. Let me try to break it down. The the SEC created various forms of capital raising, in particular with the Jobs Act, whereby you could raise capital via what's called a syndication, which is simply a fancy word for crowdfunding.
Crowdfunding.
Where you can aggregate funds from various people in order to pursue an investment that should yield a return, right? And so for me, my chosen vehicle is multifamily. Now, because of the relationships that were formed in the residential realm, as well as just business relationships with colleagues I had worked with, childhood friends, and again, fellow real estate investors within my immediate sphere, who also were like-minded and had aspirations to pursue multifamily. I sort of emerged as the guy who was doing a lot of teaching through YouTube University, and actually various on-site live seminars. There was one. It was a 6-day long seminar, almost 10 hours per day of teaching on commercial, which included how to find deals, how to structure deals, what is syndication, what's a Reg D 506B, how do you stay out of going to jail wearing orange, because I don't look good in orange. But there's a number of things, man, that are essential to understanding how to put these deals together in a legal way, because you have to do it that way. Otherwise you could get in big trouble. So as it relates to our deals, what we've done so far is we've created and you can design these in any which way that would be appealing to investors. Obviously, if the deal is not structured in a way that is appealing to them, that doesn't provide them with a satisfactory return, you're not going to get the investors, right? And so the way we've structured it is, so far we've done, and this is in process of being revised, but we've done a 70-30 split. So our investors invest, the first deal we raised 800,000, the second deal was 1.4, the third one was 1.38. And so in each of these deals, the investors in the investor pool, I allocated 70% of the ownership to those guys on a prorated basis based on how much they contributed.
Gotcha.
Right. And the general partner, our company, retained 30% ownership. Now, so in that case, it's basically a single residual split, which means that any amount of profits that we get through cash flows and when the property is refinanced or is sold, we'll simply split those proceeds 70-30. Yeah, 70% will go to the investors based on their prorated share and so on. And so the types of things that you want to indicate for the investors that would sort of resonate would be, what type of cash on cash return would I be getting for my investment? What type of a target IRR, internal rate of return, would I get over the holding period? And then lastly, what type of equity multiple would be available? So if I invest $50,000 or $100,000, how much can I expect? If it's a 2x equity multiple, then that should mean by the end of the holding period, I would have gotten not only my initial investment back, but also 100% of that. So, you would have doubled that. So, that's the way that we've been structuring the deals. Anything else, through time and experience, things evolve. And so I'm finding different and better ways to incentivize investors to invest with us that
Mm-hmm.
provides them a preferred return, um, so that even while the property is being renovated, that they would actually be getting some level of return back to them, even though the
Okay.
asset technically is not yet
It's
performing.
not right, right.
Right.
Yeah, because they're
Whereas
during your rehab phase. I mean, they're not collecting a check typically, right? They gotta
that's
wait until you
exactly right.
get occupied. So, but go
That's
ahead. What were you
exactly
saying?
right. Yeah, well, no, and so for the deal that I mentioned in Arlington, for example, we're nearing the point in time where we're going to execute a refinance. And while our investors have not received any type of cash flow distributions as of yet, once we execute that refinance, my goal is to try to return to them all of their
Hmm.
invested capital so that
Right,
they no longer have any risk in the deal,
right,
and then all the cash flow that they're getting thereafter technically is an infinite return because there's
right.
no more money in the
Right.
deal.
They've already got, yeah. And
They've
I
kept,
think, that's critical. I talk a little bit about private money, and one of the things that I try to highlight is your character and your competency,
oh
right?
yeah,
Folks being able to trust you, but then also that you know what you're doing,
oh
and
yeah,
I really applaud the fact that and I want to make sure we highlight this, as you talked about your education part, right? In terms of, just learning, self-learning, YouTube University, going to seminars with 6 days, 6 days and 10 hours a day, right? Those things, you can go buy a course. Anybody can buy a course, but you've got to do it, right? You've got to study the materials. You've got to, put them in that practice. You've got to do things, right? You got to go and actually do deals, right?
right.
You're not going to gain from just having it up here. You've got to actually do it. And I see that folks have really been drawn to what you're doing because they see your character. They see the fact that you deliver, but your investors are getting paid first. That's the other piece of it, is
Oh
realizing
yeah,
that, hey, if I'm gonna take your money, I'm gonna treat your money better than I'm gonna treat my own money.
that's
You're gonna
exactly
get
right.
paid first, and it's kind of like that whole concept of, hey, these are repeat customers. So your goal, it sounds like, is not just, hey, fund my deal. I want you to come back, right? I want you to come back and fund another deal and
Oh
another
yeah,
deal and another deal, and I think that's really important to bring that level of character and kind of just have that long vision, because it's definitely seems like it's working out great for you.
yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about so you mentioned you're going to learn one way or another, right? So tell us a little bit of the experiential learning that you've incurred over the years that was maybe a little bit painful or a little bit expensive in terms of just making mistakes or just things that you wish you would have done different.
Yeah, I'll tell you a couple things, and I'll even tell you about a near miss. Sometimes you learning from near
Yeah,
misses is
those
even
those are the ones that you're like, oh, thank you, thank God.
what I will tell. So a lot of the reason why our company has evolved is because of some of these learnings that I've gained over the course of time. And so, as an example, raising capital for a deal. Well, first of all, finding the deal, making sure you do the complete due diligence, um, and then raising capital for the deal, and then sourcing the debt for the deal.
Mm-hmm.
Those those are all full-time jobs. And
Yeah, that sounds heavy.
it's a lot of work. And there was a situation, for example, where we were in the process of raising capital. We had the debt secured, and because I can't remember exactly what occurred, but something happened where the closing date was approaching and we weren't going to be able to close on time. I think that or another, that the lender needed additional time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so the seller, I needed to approach and say, hey, listen, we need some more time in order to close. And I think they were going to be, at first they pushed back and said, no, we need to close right away. And then when I got them to say, okay, we can go ahead and move the date, I think their ask of me was simply to release the amount of money that we had in the earnest money in escrow, which was
Okay.
a measly $100,000.
I was gonna say it wasn't a $1,000 earnest money deposit,
Yeah,
right?
it was just
Yeah,
a hundred
just 100 grand. I
dollars.
mean, I got it sitting
Yeah.
around.
So, I got my attorney on the line. We spoke with the broker and their attorney, and ultimately we came to an agreement whereby we released a portion of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got the 2 weeks that we need. Actually, we got a full month,
Okay.
enabled us to close the deal. But that was, so the thing that I learned from that is anytime that we can sort of segregate the raising of capital from the debt sourcing,
Mm-hmm.
it's always going to be beneficial, because you don't want to rely on having all of the capital raised to close on the deal, and you not have enough to
Right.
close.
Right.
And because that was another factor in that particular transaction. And the other thing that I on separately, on our very first deal, I didn't realize that in order to qualify for some of these loans, this is actually very good for your audience as well to hear, is that when you go to source these loans, they're pretty large, and typical requirements, at least for the agency lenders like Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, is
Mm-hmm.
that the borrower, even if it's in an LLC, they'll underwrite the property first, and
Mm-hmm.
then they'll underwrite the borrower. You, as the borrower, need to ensure that you have an equivalent amount of net worth
Mm-hmm.
to the loan size.
Okay.
Okay. And you have, at that time, it was 9 months worth of liquidity in the form of, cash that was available. So what that means is, on property, I believe we bought it for 2.328. The loan on it was 1.6. And so, in other words, my net worth needed to be equivalent to 1.6, which I wasn't quite there yet.
Right.
And meanwhile, we're in process. I've
You're
got this
already
thing.
in the deal at this
I've
point.
got this thing under
Yeah.
contract. I've got to figure out how do I do this. So fortunately, I had a someone who I actually sat next to in one of our initial real estate conference that we attended,
Mm-hmm.
we became good friends, and he was partial owner in a company. He had a net worth that was more than sufficient to
Mm-hmm.
meet the requirements. So I brought him into the deal,
Okay.
and he ended up being a co-signer, a
Gotcha.
co-sponsor on the deal for me. And
Gotcha.
so
You were able to phone a friend on this deal.
I phoned a friend, and he came through.
I
And of
just
course, yeah.
when you start telling that story, I just had this visual of like you like driving Uber and DoorDash, trying to get all this liquidity. It's like, what are you doing, Chris? You got a full, you got a great job. It's like, man, I got to get this money. But
Yeah.
that's really great, man. When you look at it, it shows you the power of networking too, right?
Hmm.
And you start talking about, hey, sharing what you're doing with other people, learning right alongside others, and then having mentors, right? So, you've kind of told about, so it sounds like you've been really fortunate, in your journey so far. You haven't had any of those, oh my gosh, moments. And I'm sure you've had some, but that whole thing of just causing you to like want to say, hey, maybe this isn't for me. But what I'm hearing is that, mentors have played a big piece, and network is playing a big piece. What has that process been for you? When you start talking about, hey, I'm doing my first deal, this guy's in my class, he's got the funds that I need, sitting through different trainings. What role has networking and mentors played in your journey?
Yeah, I mean, the relationships are everything, really. And so, whether it be relationships that I formed with people who now readily write checks for $100,000 or more, because they trust what I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
and they've learned enough about what I'm doing, in order to entrust me with that. I mean, it really is an honor for me to do that, and serve them in that capacity. And I do see it exactly that way. I mean, I'm working hard for them,
Mm-hmm.
in order to ensure that the returns that I've promised are going to be produced. And so, relationships are definitely key in that. I think relationships are also key when you're talking about, you know, uh, uh, sourcing different needs that I may have, whether it be in the form of legal advice or accounting advice, input, property management, all the different things that are required in order to effectively run this kind of a business. All those are based on networking.
Right.
I think the more that people can know what it is that you're doing, learn about your character, what your intentions are, what type of what type of reputation that you have. I mean, your reputation is the biggest, I think, asset that you have in this space,
Absolutely.
and
That's
you
good.
really you need to safeguard that with everything. Not for the sake of looking good, but really for the sake of ensuring that people know and understand the type of value that you're looking to deliver for other people. As it relates to mentors, yeah, I mean, there are a number of people who I admire, who I follow either on social media or some other means, that through books and things that I'm constantly learning from, even though we
Mhm.
don't interact face to face. But
Right.
I consider them to be mentors of mine.
Absolutely.
There are other people who, you know, I do talk to on a regular basis, who provide that type of mentorship and things. But you know, as I reach up, I'm looking to reach back and help other people too. And so
Absolutely.
I've sort of become a mentor to a lot of people who are aspiring to do what I'm doing now, which I'm more than happy to help them do exactly that, and just share whatever knowledge that I've been able to gain so far. So yeah, mentorship and networking, man, are two very important things in this space.
Yeah, I love that. You know, you talk about um, the relationship piece of it, and sometimes, I mean, I know me, I'm an engineer by trade, right? So I'm an analytic, you know. So sometimes when I first started, I thought it was really just about the numbers, right? If the numbers make sense, let's do the deal. But then over
Right.
time, you start to realize, like, hey, this is relational, right? If
Yeah.
people know you, you talk to them, you form relationships. You know, things you can work things out, right? I mean, you start talking about even the seller you were dealing with earlier, where you needed more time. That was relational, right?
Yeah.
So this whole business is very people driven, it's very relationship driven, and I love the fact that you're giving back too, right? Because when you start looking at it, you know, it's all about making others better, right? Adding value to them. And I see you doing it. And I think that's amazing, because there are so many folks who, you know, we live in the information age, which is a great thing. You know, you can hop on YouTube, you can just send somebody a message, you know, and you can connect, right? And you don't have to actually fly across the country. You don't
Right.
have to, you know, you can just get on a Zoom call, right? And it's literally
Yeah.
you're adding value to one another, you're giving back and whatnot. So that's amazing stuff. So in terms of giving back, right? Let's say somebody is like, man, Christian, I love this. I want to do it. What would you suggest, you know, just as a 12-month plan, right? If somebody wants to, they're like, I love what you're talking about. I think multifamily is for me. What would be what would be a good start plan for them, an action plan over the next 6 to 12 months? What would that look like?
Yeah, you know, I think my first 6 months, honestly, was even before we went to our very first course, was
Hmm.
going on YouTube and go on Googling. I mean, you talk about the information age. There's so many different resources at our fingertips through books and information that's available. Uh, and you can pretty quickly decipher, okay, what is real versus what is
Hmm.
not, because you sort of have to be aware of that too. There's going to be a lot of people out there that will tout all the great successes that they've had, who aren't even doing deals anymore. They're just
Right.
trying to
Just
sell
selling
something.
material. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you definitely don't want to engage with those kind of people, but there is sufficient enough information out there. You know, there's videos that you can look up if you were to search, you know, how to buy my first multifamily property. There's a
Hmm.
number of different videos there, and you know, you can subscribe to some of those folks, and just really begin to get more and more engaged with some of the not some of the uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Some of the different terminology,
Hmm.
you know, NOI, GOI, effective
Right.
rent,
Yep.
gross rent. I mean, all this
IRR. Yeah.
IR, all that. What
Yep.
are all these acronyms
All these
for?
acronyms, what are they?
And really getting familiar with those things. The other thing that I would say is find somebody who is actively doing these types of deals, or the
Yep.
types of deals that you want to engage in, whether it's single family or multifamily or whatever, and learn from them, either by offering to do some kind of work on a project,
Hmm.
um, or to be involved in some way, or actually, if you are at the point where you have capital but you're lacking the knowledge and the experience, you know, the best way, I think, is to actually invest with one of those
Right.
guys, so
Yep.
that way you can learn what is their level and style of communication, what are they doing to the property, how are they executing, and then get sort of an insider's view, so that
That's good. Yeah.
when it's time for you to pursue something on your own, you have at least some sense of how it should go
Mm-hmm.
if the person you have invested with is doing things the right way.
Right.
And so that would be my recommendation is, some self-education using YouTube or reading books. Um, one book that I would plug is called How to Create Wealth Investing in Real Estate by Grant Cardone.
Mm.
And that
Love
one,
Grant Cardone.
yeah, he's Uncle G, man. He's
Yeah.
legit. That's one that I would recommend simply because he himself will tell you he's just an ordinary guy, and he speaks he writes like he speaks, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of grammatical mistakes in
Yep.
there, but I don't think he was trying to write to get some kind of some award, but rather to communicate information and knowledge that he
Yep.
had. So that's one book that I
Absolutely.
would recommend.
Good stuff.
And then again, engaging with somebody who is actively doing deals. I'm always looking to expand my investor base as well, and so anybody who would be interested in doing anything with us,
Mm-hmm.
we're open to that.
Right.
But yeah, that's what I would say is get in the game.
Yeah, and that's so good. I mean, I like the last one that you mentioned, because I think that's key, because sometimes people do have every one of us has a barrier, right?
Mhm.
Some of us, the barrier is the cash. Some of us, the barrier is the knowledge. Some of us, the barrier is time, right? So
Mhm.
when you go and you partner with somebody who is strong where you're weak, right? You can actually come alongside and bring ultimate value. That whole piece of, hey, if a person's like, hey, I've got this income, right? Self-directed IRA, or I've got, just inheritance, whatever it is, right? Or I'm a high income earner, but
Right.
I'm tired of the stock market, but I really want to get into real estate, but I'm afraid. So they come alongside and they partner with somebody like Christian, who is like, hey, I'm going to walk you alongside me. I'm going to put your capital to use, right? To
Yep.
benefit you and me, but at the same time, you're actually learning, right? And that
Right.
to me is the opposite of a paid internship, right? It's like, hey,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, right? It's like, I am gaining so much value from it, but I think that's key, and I remember in my journey, I took 6 months, I think it might've been 6 to 9 months, and I didn't try to do a deal. I just read everything I get my hands on, and
Right.
I have a construction background, but I didn't have the other pieces. So I think that's critical, right? Invest in your education, like Christian said, find mentors, partner up, and then find somebody who's actually doing it. You hit a
Mhm.
big key, because there's no shortage of people who will take your money.
I know that's right.
There is no shortage, right?
I know
There's
that's
snake
right.
oil salesmen and all that kind of stuff, but look for somebody who's actually doing this thing, actually doing deals, and kind of partner up with them.
And one thing I'll add to that, Marseille, is that one of the things that I'm proud to have created here within the last 2 to 3 months now is something called the Redeem Team Mastermind.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do have a mastermind now, which allows people to have access to me on a one-to-one basis, unlimited. We have meetings and events. We have resources and tools that I make available to people at the very same documents that an SEC attorney has produced for me.
Mm-hmm.
I make readily available to people to use as a template if they should so choose.
Right.
Obviously, you would still want to have an attorney
Yeah,
review
you're
that and
to
finalize
review.
that.
Yeah.
But at least the template there that I pay $10,000 for,
Right.
I'm basically offering as part of this
That's the
group,
training. Yeah.
so that people can have access to that. The other thing is that unlike other programs that are out there, we basically offer a no risk type of a guarantee. And what I mean
Mm-hmm.
by that is, if somebody wants their money back after 30 days, they can get it back. But then also, any amount of money that they have invested
Mm-hmm.
for their membership fee, those automatically are credited to a limited partner position when we purchase a deal. And
Nice.
so it's not like they're putting money in some black hole that they're never going to
Right.
see
Never going to
again,
see again. Yeah.
which is exactly how some of these programs work.
Right.
Unfortunately, I want to make sure people derive value from this. And so if for someone who it's really beneficial for two types of, well, for a person, two criteria are met. One is they plan to invest with me regardless and
Mm-hmm.
as a limited partner. And then number two, they have a desire to learn how to do this stuff.
Right.
If they do, then, the amount of money that they would have paid into the membership fee automatically gets credited
I
anyway
see.
to the limited partner position. So
Right.
at any rate, I just mentioned that because there are people who are interested, and we've been building up our membership base. It's capped at 50 people just because there's only so much of me to go
Right.
around. But
Yeah.
I offer that to anybody who may be pursuing something like that.
Yeah, and that's really good. Even when you start talking about, how does a person get started? I mean, you literally have, somewhat of a turnkey solution, right? It's like, hey, come aboard, and we're gonna work with you, but we don't want to just take your money, right? We're not just here to be,
No,
I don't have this vision of seeing you at 3 a.m., with an infomercial coming on and and palm trees behind you. This is literally like, hey, we want to add value, and I think, that's really key to kind of highlight. Really good stuff, man. And so what we're actually going to do is we're going to link in the show notes your website, all the information, so that folks, won't just hear it, but they can actually follow up on it and take action. One of the things I like that Grant Cardone says is you got to take massive action.
massive
10
action.
exit, man. Just say, hey,
Yep.
and as I look at Christian, your story, man, I see massive action. To go in 3 years, 3+ years, and to amass what you've amassed and have done what you've done, man, that is amazing, man. And I just commend what you've done. So tell me a little bit about what you do, man, when you're not working your day job, and when you are not raising capital and rehabbing apartment complexes and creating great communities. What do you like to do when you're not doing those things? In
Oh
the
man.
last 5 minutes that you have
Yeah,
in a
no,
given day.
listen, I love my family. I think I might have mentioned I've been married for 18 years to a beautiful woman who is a great mom to my kiddos, and just a great wife. And so I've got a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old, two boys. They're very active, and play sports and those types of things. So, love being out there supporting them. Um, we're heavily involved with church, and really just being part of that community. It's been challenging, of course, with the pandemic,
Yeah.
to be on site there, but have started doing some activities together in groups, and so that's been exciting. Um, and really, I call myself a movie buff. I like going to the theater every now and again, and taking in a movie.
Okay.
Um, we did actually. So one of the things that I really enjoy that I've not done as frequently as I would like is fishing. And I mentioned the mastermind. We have a quarterly event. This last event that we did was in Orange Beach, Alabama, and we incorporated a full day of deep sea fishing,
Nice.
which was really nice. We hauled in a lot of fish, and then the evening session was me providing a master class on real estate investing.
Wow.
And so really neat. And the fish that we caught, by the way,
I
is
was gonna
this.
say, what happened to the fish? Did y'all eat was that thrown on the grill that night? Fish
That
tacos and
that
all that
that
good
was
stuff?
we brought it to the restaurant where I gave the little
Nice.
presentation, and we ate well that night.
Man, that
And
is
then
good
and
stuff.
then had enough to send home with folks. So that was really cool. So yeah,
Excellent, excellent,
those are some
excellent.
of the activities, man.
Yeah, that's good stuff, man. And I think, as you look at this whole thing, right, there's a method to the madness, there's a why behind what you do. And as I'm, all the time and energy you put into it, I know you're thinking about your wife, you're thinking about your kids, you're trying to make sure you're spending time with them, thinking about church, these things, so you own your own time and can do the things you're truly passionate about doing, and I think that's one of the things that I love about real estate is that it is a vehicle. And as for all the people listening, it's just not something to make you rich, right? It's something that just provides, it's a tool like anything else, right?
Yep.
It's a tool to get you to a desired end, and I definitely see you using that, man. And
Trying.
I applaud you, man. And just so proud of what you've been able to do, what God's blessed you to be able to do, and the beautiful family he's given you, man. And, I appreciate you coming on today to hang out with us. And
Yeah.
tell us before we go, how can we connect with you? How can we, we're going to link you in the show notes and whatnot. Tell us about, what platforms are you on? I know you mentioned your mastermind. What's a good way to connect with Mr. Christian Catron?
Yeah, no. So you could look me up via our website, redeeminvestments.com. We've got Facebook, we've got Instagram. So at Redeem Investments, those are the best ways to get a hold of me. If you want to email me directly, it's just Christian at redeeminvestments.com. and happy to engage and have follow-up discussions with anybody who I can help. So thank you
Excellent.
so much for
Excellent.
having me on. I really appreciate it. It's been a joy and a privilege, man. Really.
Absolutely, man. It has been a ball, man. Well, that's what we got for you guys tonight. That's been Mr. Christian Catron with Redeem Investments, and just bringing us some great value. Want to remind you guys to make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Every week we're bringing you brand new videos, great content to help you in your business, help you to grow. Whether you're doing your first deal, your 10th deal, or your 100th deal, we're trying to bring something to you to add value. So that's me, Marseille, the property pastor, signing off from today's episode. God bless you. Love you guys and can't wait to see you again. Take care.